Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. It's Alan Schimmel and you're watching Tech Strong Gang. Yeah, it definitely seems like there's some bounties out there on CEOs. They're becoming a bit of an endangered species. Though the funny thing is, every time you lose one, you get one. So sometimes with this new thing with co-CEOs, you get two. But we're going to talk about that. SharePoint. Who uses SharePoint? But SharePoint security, IT spending, all kinds of good stuff here on the gang today. We got a great gang to talk about it with you. They're some of our regulars. Let me introduce you to them. We have Kate Scarcella with that R in there. Hard for me to do, but we got it. We've got our resident True North security person, Chris Blask, and Mitch Ashley, as well as the Dean, Mike Vizard. Welcome, gang. We got a lot to talk about. So, Mike, CEOs are dropping like flies.
Or so it would seem. There was a report out that suggested CEOs in general, the turnover is a lot higher, including in the tech sector. And of course, we've seen some infamous stuff now with the whole Coldplay scenario involving Astronomer. And I believe Blackstone also replaced the CEO for, I think it's QTS Realty. Is that how I think that's how that's said? But apparently they felt that he wasn't driving the company maybe hard enough. And this also comes on the heels of, we saw turnover at Intel earlier this year. We saw a lot of drama around OpenAI and not having a CEO for half a second. Alan, what's your take on what's going on here? Is there just more pressure? Is this the bro culture at work, or something else is happening around the economy maybe?
You know, like many things in life, Mike, there's no simple answer to complex problems. And I think in this particular case, there's more than one answer. Look, I would start off by saying if you want to be a CEO, probably try to stay off the kiss cam with your mistress. Just saying, right? So, but, kidding aside, those poor two people, huh? Well, look, it happens. But the bigger issue there is that all of a sudden morals matter, ethics and morals matter in this country, in this market. I know, Chris, you want to jump in. Go ahead. And then I'll come back. There's more to why CEOs are dropping.
I have a roommate, here, one of my oldest friends, Ian Nielsen, who's a musician and a sound engineer. And we talk a lot about the history of communications and media, right? And we always come back to the fact that it's a fairly short arc. We're talking 100 years. The oldest person alive today was born before there was radio and music and, vinyl and everything else. And we've gotten through this process where we have sort of run through all the human stories. And to this point, the Odysseus' return, the hero's arc, when, this grand hero is going to save the company and do the things, it works pretty well for a while, but it's brittle. And with a lot of transparency, Coldplay, it starts to show the weaknesses. But there are other stories. And we know in business that sometimes they work. The hero's return, when you leave and you come back and home is different, but so are you, but that's okay, right? The Hobbit's return at the end of Lord of the Rings, right? These are also stories that work. And we know in companies, when you don't just perform, you actually do the things that tends to survive the problems that happen all the time. And if you don't, and the world gets more transparent around you, well, it might not be a good plan anymore.
Yep. But the issue here is, do we care about morals and ethics? Or if it's, to your point, Chris, if the CEO's bringing home the bacon, we don't give a crap who they're hanging out with at the Coldplay concert. But there's more to it too, guys. There's also an issue of, because there's so many confluent things going on here. CEOs who aren't adapting to the new reality of AI, to the new reality of perhaps a new world order, right? Sovereignty, IT sovereignty, and these kinds of things. CEOs, frankly, that have held on a really long time. And, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And then the reformers come in and, want to clean house. I think it's all of these trends where the economic chaos I put it in this article, right, about, Taco. And I'm not talking about President Trump Taco. You got tech, AI, couple other things in there. And so it's sort of a perfect storm kind of moment where fresh leadership is on the agenda. Fresh leadership is on the agenda. What worked before may not work going forward. You've got to toe the line when it comes to listening to your board who holds the purse strings. You've got to be a good advocate or hero or image for your customer. And look, maybe it is the end of the tech bro thing. Maybe, as I wrote in the article, the hoodie wearing, tweet storming tech bro CEO just isn't the cool dude in town anymore. Maybe that CEO's putting on a sports jacket now and wearing a collared shirt.
I'm going to bring up AI because there's a lot of topics, a lot of discussion about can AI replace CEOs? And I know the AI lab the director of the lab at MIT said he thought about 80% of a CEO's job could be done by AI. But my question to you is, if AI could do a better job than a human CEO, would the board replace them with that AI?
Today, maybe not. But in the future, absolutely.
In a heartbeat, if they could better financial performance of the company, strategy, all that, absolutely.
I mean, it's going to take someone who has the cojones to break the barrier, right? Like Branch Rickey bringing Jackie Robinson in. Do you know what I mean? But once that dam is broke, I think you'll see it. Chris, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think the question is not just for CEOs, but the rest of us, when you have 80% of your time freed up, what do you do with it? And if the answer is nothing, yeah, in that case, the board is going to replace you. Sorry, Kate?
I think, hold on a second on that Mitch point. You can't replace CEOs with AI because somebody has to actually sign something and be accountable for the SEC and the rules and regs. So there's going to always be somebody sitting there who can go to jail when things go wrong.
Well, that's a great job for someone. I'll volunteer for that. Kate, how about you?
I think at the end of the day, when we're talking about, I think like with the Coldplay situation and, this whole idea that the focus became more on what was happening for what the CEO was doing as opposed to what the company was doing. That's where things became uncomfortable for the company, right? But what's interesting is how some morals play into companies, and it's like, okay, well, we can't have this. And yet within, I hate to say this, but within our government, some of these crazy, like you can do whatever you want and you're still going to be this leader, it really depends at the end of the day. It depends who your followers are. And there's some who are just Teflon. It doesn't seem to matter what they do or what they believe or what they say. And there's others that, wow, you step out of line once and you're gone. So I think it's a very complicated issue.
But I think it is personality driven, to your point, and a bit of a cult of personality, right? And sometimes, though, the time comes where they overthrow the despot and the cult of personality doesn't work. But here's the thing. This is why I say there's so many different, currents in this water. You're a CEO who highly believes in DEI, Tim Cook, or, some of these folks. All of a sudden you find yourself at odds with present day morals. Or you don't believe in DEI, or all of these things. And because that pendulum swings. And so do you want a CEO that swings with it, or who has a true north?
At the end of the day, I think the true north matters because you want to be able to, I think as a CEO, be predictable in the patterns. You have to be smart. You have to know, strategize, but they also have to know the horse. You have to know who you're betting on, right?
Well, you got to read the room too. Chris, you got your hand up.
Alan, I've had a lot of this conversation about this, so we have a history of it, right? And I'm always trying to look back. And Kate, your comments make you just think of the environment that allows that to, is that a stable environment, or is that just transitory? Is that something that works for a couple of years, a couple of decades, even a century? Things have changed a lot. And I see in this the fragile story. This whole idea, the comic, the Sergeant Rock comics, I grew up on, still love them, where the hero's going to come in and what do they do? And we see it play out in Hollywood. We've seen it play out in companies. We grew up with 5 companies we can see. Now we see hundreds, thousands, millions. And that's a fragile story. It's not sustainable. It'll work sometimes, but not often. It's a saber-tooth story, right? It'll appear for a while. As soon as conditions change, it can't sustain it. And Kate, that we all, at the end of the day, I think I've done a decent job in my career. And I've been questioned on this, but I'm like, aside from morals and ethics, I don't have the time. I don't have the time for the BS, but I'd rather just focus on, I don't care what my competitors are doing very much, right? I'm not going to spend my time trying to get inside their systems, move forward. And just because this hero, fragile hero cycle has worked for, part of our lifetimes or all of it, doesn't mean it's going to last. And look at the world. Everyone can see everything. It's not, it's not the X-Files days. It's not secret hidden things. You may see a lot of things that aren't true, but the ability to hide something that is true is tenable.
Well, just speaking from my own experience, that it seems that companies that are, built by a person, a self-made whatever entrepreneur, startup person, or they start a grocery chain or whatever it might be, those tend to be where that person is the strong personality of the company. And Alan, I think you might agree with me. Startup companies, smaller companies are very personality driven by the CEO. I mean, it's built around that person, even if it's not the person that started the company. Whereas I think when you get into other companies where this CEO could be replaced by the next one, bottom line, it comes down to the financial performance of the company, the return to the shareholders, the stock price. And when things happen, when what hits the fan, whatever the issue is, whether it's a security breach or an affair by somebody on the executive team with, a subordinate, whatever it is, if it doesn't become a big deal, it's not a big deal. If it becomes a big deal, then the board notices and they'll do something about it, or the leadership will. So it's all relative. And I don't mean to be jaded about that. I just think that's the real view of the world. Because if you told me that, a high-flying, really well-performing company that, stockholders are just rolling in it, and the CEO has an affair with the VP of HR, they're not going to let go of that CEO. They never would, unless it's really going to impact their business. If suddenly customers are leaving, suddenly that's become in the way of getting financial performance out of the company. That's just my view.
And to your point, I don't think customers leave. I mean, outside of that small company where maybe the head person is also the tech leader, but in general, it seems to me a lot of organizations are not going to, rethink a $1 million investment in an IT product and strategy that they've got going simply because there's a new CEO. They might be a little unsettled, but they're not going to switch horses.
Let me give you another example and play off of that though, Mike. Would the customer consider moving his $1 million investment because the CEO was caught on camera with his girlfriend, his mistress, who's also an exec team member? Is that enough for a customer to leave? I don't want to do business with a company that the CEO cheats on his wife.
I think if the company didn't know about it beforehand, and then it's just water under the bridge, they got a new CEO, they recognized it, and
what about if you're right? So what about if the company said, "Look, that's his private life. It has nothing to do with how good my product is. There's no reason, customer, that you should have to worry about that."
Right. There are some customers who are not going to be bothered by that, and there are others who might be, and they're going to have to make a personal decision.
Right. I'd suggest as a business, you should be aware of your customer environment enough to make a decision. And if you make the wrong one, then either you're not paying attention, or sometimes life's hard and you make the wrong choice. But
let me throw something at you. if we were going to take this and apply it to every president who's ever occupied the White House, would we have any presidents?
Well, I think it's less about the Coldplay thing. It's a good example, but right, it's the whole issue of caught doing, right? In this one, it depends, right? I think Mike's exactly right. You understand your customers, handle which way you like, but the whole idea that we can maintain a hero image from Mitch, you're right. The startup CEO thing, I like that role. There's 2 people, 5 people, but if it's going to be mature, that's got to be more than a person. And as long as it is, and it's too much about that, that's too fragile a narrative that can't survive real life, then that's not a good company decision.
Yep. Hey, I want to close this one out, though. Let me just say, this is not just about the whole Coldplay astronomer thing. Don't lose sight of how important it is for CEOs to stay current on what today's trends are. What today's, not just trends, but sort of currents that you have to swim in. You can't swim against these currents. And those currents today include AI, include surviving in the current political, economic environments, as well as evidently, minding your P's and Q's. So we'll take a break here on Techstrong Gang. Let's come back and we're going to talk about IT spending outlook. You're watching Techstrong Gang.